Hello, and welcome to this edition of People in Transition. I'm your host, Bob Gerst. I've been hiring and mentoring executives, frontline employees, and job seekers for nearly 40 years through a host of transitions, some difficult, but most very good. This experience has given me a bird's eye view on a variety of trends, economies, industry disruptors, and transitions, big and small. It also brought me into contact with the thought leaders and decision makers you need to meet. Imagine knowing exactly what to do next and how to know it's time to make your big job change. We all know transitions can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. And it's even fun when you have actionable strategies and proven tactics to achieve the future you want. We'll share with you the tools and skills that can take your dreams to your next great job. So if change is on your horizon, you won't want to miss this discussion. Also, please subscribe to this podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. Cecile Peterkin, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of People in Transition. I know we're going to have a great time. You've got such a wonderful background and wealth of knowledge that I'm excited about this discussion.
Rob, I'm excited to be here as well. It's a pleasure to join you on your podcast. And yes, I agree. We will have a lot of fun.
Cecile, one of my signature questions that my listeners always enjoy hearing about is, if you think back to when you were a child, what was it that you wanted to be when you grew up?
Well, I don't know why I thought of this at that time, but I guess it was during that time when there weren't as many careers out there. But I wanted to be a nurse. Now, the funny thing behind this is I don't like needles. So I don't know how I'd be able to take blood or do anything like that. However, gotten wiser as I got older, I realized, no, that's not what I want to do at all. So I wanted to become a pharmacist. And because I love science and I was very good in high school, I was very good in science. And what I like about science is there's always something different. You're actually putting things together. And at the end, you are the master of whatever comes out of it. So I love doing that. So I decided to go into chemistry, to the disappointment of my dad, who thought I should have done nursing, but that's okay. He paid anyway. So I went on to university to do chemistry. And it was during the time of a recession when I graduated and I couldn't find a job in my field, because the idea was taking a year off and work, and then I was planning to become a pharmacist. Never end up doing that because during that year, I got a job to work in business, in finance. And I realized, wow, I'm making really good money in finance as someone who came out with a chemistry degree. Why am I going back to school? So I never end up going back. I stayed in finance until I transitioned out of finance and now doing my own business.
I want to start broader, and then we'll start focusing in on job transitions themselves. I just read someplace that 70% of all working age people are actively looking for a job change. Yeah, what do you take from that?
It's funny. Now why I think a lot more people are paying attention to it is because after the pandemic, the economy, job loss, there's just so many things that have gone on in the last 5 years. But in general, people are always looking for a job. Always. It's always been, but never that high at 70%. And the reason I think behind that as well, too, a lot of people became accustomed to being at home during the pandemic and working from home. And they enjoyed that because a lot of people, they were able to balance home life as well as working, as well as even schooling their kids. And if you have younger kids, it became very easy for them, instead of leaving to drop a daycare, to pick up from daycare. By the time they get home, it's dark. And I think that's where the stress is coming from and why a lot of people are considering leaving their job, because they've got a taste of something different compared to getting up every morning, dropping the kids, coming home, making supper, getting to bed late, they're tired. I think that's part of it. And also people just want that flexibility to be able to do different things outside of just working. And that happened during the pandemic. They could go for walks because they finished early because they didn't have to travel back and forth. That's my take on it.
I read also, Cecile, that on average, a person has 12 jobs during their lifetime. And I have to say that as a recruiter, I used to have some concerns if I saw too many jobs for the individual. And now balance that out. I look maybe a little bit more questioning if a person hasn't had enough jobs in their background. Talk a little bit from that standpoint of how do you balance out too many jobs, not enough jobs, and what does that mean for the individual?
When I was in the finance, we didn't have an HR. So management, we did our own interviews. And like you, Bob, I used to do the same thing, look at how many jobs. But I also looked at how long they stayed at a company. And if they're bouncing around too quickly between jobs, that's when the red flag would go up for me. For instance, and depending on their age as well, too. If they stay between 3 to 5 years in a position, and depending on the position, it could be that they were leaving. So during the interview, I would ask and tell them to be open and honest. If it was for a salary, yes. If they were let go, yes. So tell me why you had moved so quickly. But now, why people want to leave because they're looking for change. And the younger generation as well, to Gen Zs that everyone talk about. And I don't have anything negative to talk about them, and I don't want to either, because I admire a lot of things about them where, generation past, where you get a job, you sit there and you sit there until you retire, and you got old and miserable in the job and you complain every time you went home. Whereas they want jobs where they're able to learn, they're able to grow, and they're experiencing something. And what I find with a lot of them as well too, and it's not something about them, it's just society on a whole and how they were raised. It's that things have changed a lot and they don't want to work as hard as their parents, because there's a lot of them realizing now how much their parents have worked and how hard they've worked to have found a house and car and all these things. And their parents are still working and they don't want to work that way. I love the term that they use. It's like they want to experience life, not keep working. Life is not completely about working. They want to be able to travel. They want to be able to do this. They want to be able to do that. And that's how they tend to function. Whereas there's a generation of people where work is their life. And they'll just continue working until they're finished and they get their pension and then they start to live. The dynamics now I find in the workplace, it's difficult because they're actually 3 or 4 generation now in workplaces, and everyone function at a different level because they're still veterans at work. Then they're the baby boomers, and then there's the X, and then there's the Y, and then there's Z. And they all function differently because the time has changed. They're raised differently. They view work on a different scale. So that piece around so many generations, it could be in one corporation and everyone's seeing the difference. I noticed that it's a bit of a battle from working with my clients.
What role does personal interest or passion play in deciding to change a career?
I love that question, Bob. That's a really good question. Personal interest. Personal interests, I find, depend on what they studied in school. And passion, so some will take personal interest because this is what I studied in school. Because a lot of times people put their passion aside to go to university to study something that's a little bit more tangible than their passion. And eventually, I do feel that after people work for 5 or 10 years, especially in the same company, they're getting a little bit burnt out if they're doing a work that they're not passionate about. And that's when, you finish university at, say, age 24, 25. So you're still young enough that you can pursue your passion. If you're not married, or even if you're married, you haven't started having kids, you don't have a house, especially now. So you just figure it's time for me to leave to pursue my passion and find something else to do because I'll never be able to afford to buy a house anyway. And I don't see anything wrong with pursuing your passion, but like everything else you're going to do in life, if you're planning a trip, you always sit there for months to have a plan for the trip. And it's the same thing. If you're going to pursue your passion, you should have a plan. Start talking to people who are doing the same thing that you would like to do to see what it's like. So when you leave, you have a roadmap as if you're traveling somewhere.
Which kind of leads us to my next question. How can individuals assess whether they are financially prepared for a career transition?
That should be a part of their plan. And before their transition, it's when I speak to clients in their transition, and I always say to them, why? I ask because I like to use Simon Sinek method of start with why, then you go to the how, and then you go to the what. And from what he says, this is how great leaders lead. So you have to look at yourself is that I tend to say to clients, look at yourself as Cecile Peterkin Inc. So you are a product out there because this is what you're doing. You're now marketing yourself, so you're Inc. And What is it you want to pursue? Why at this time you want to transition? And why? Why now? And why this transition? And what I find, for example, I was working with this one lady that she was let go. She was packaged out and she had a really good package. And her package also include recruitment as well as coaching. And so she took the coaching first before recruitment. And she came to me and she said she wanted to start this business. It sounded really great. When I went through all the things about starting a business and what she'll need to do and everything else, and sent her home with her homework, and she had a 3-month contract. At the end of 2 months, she said, I do believe I will start pursuing going back to a different job. So a lot of people are not prepared for what it is to be an entrepreneur, starting your own business. And especially if you don't have a nice cushy package, when you leave the company and you don't have any savings, how are you going to start that company? They don't think that they're just because they've got that vision for that company, being their own boss, especially if they're escaping because they don't like the company or management.
Cecile, what role do you think certification or further education of that candidate, what role does it play in that person being successful in their career transition?
I do believe it is successful because, one, it shows that you're capable of higher learnings. You're not really going to sit in that company and do the same job for the next 25 years until you retire. You're going to be more of a strategic thinker where you're thinking of ideas of how to change even your own job that you're doing in that company. You will also not sit there and be miserable if you don't like your job anymore. You're more inclined to leave that job. So that's why I think career advancement, whether you have your undergrad after you finish high school, or you decide after graduation from an undergrad you want to do your master's and you're pursuing something. And it doesn't have to be, an acronym behind your name. It could just going back to school in general to take anything that you didn't excel well at school, or just something to keep your brain active and to know what's actually out there on the market. So it does, because when I was doing hiring, I did look at candidates who actually excel at not just stopping from getting their degree, but continue doing courses, just even going to community college and taking a night course in something, because it's keeping your brain fresh and active.
Cecile, when you make a job change, a career change, you're going to have factors that are going to impact that change. And one of them is the psychological or the emotional factors that go along with this transition. How do you consider those psychological, emotional factors? How do you deal with those? And are they pointing you in a direction sometimes that you should be aware of that spotlight that it's shining on?
Yes, because a lot of times when we have our thoughts, it's that inner voice. It's your own inner voice is just pointing you into a direction, or actually giving you that little beep to say, think about this before you move ahead. And, when you stop to think about it, is even talk to a friend and says, well, I was just sitting here planning what's going on. I hear this little voice in my head saying, why don't you meet some people that has actually done this before and just think about where you're going? Are you really ready for this? Because we all get that little voices a lot of times in our head. But sometimes our ego get in the way and we really don't listen because we're set on doing that thing that we want to do. So whenever I'm working with clients who are going through transition and they'll say, well, this is what came up. And I said, sit with it for a bit. Sit with it. Listen to what you're hearing yourself. Because I always said, that is you. I said, that is your inner voice directing you. So listen to what they're saying. And when you just quiet yourself, talk it over with just one person of what's coming up. And then you start discussing, how do you feel about those voices that you're hearing say, this is not the time. Do you have enough money? And where's your plan? And I always say to them, have you started your plan? Because your plan could answer a lot of those questions that's coming up in your head, because you should never be starting a business without a plan.
Let's talk about that career transition plan. You've mentioned financial should be a part of it. What are the other component parts in that career transition plan?
So financial plan is the biggest thing is you start with your why, is right. Once you got your why and that's working, now then you go down to and come to how. How is looking at how are you going to finance it? What type of business it's going to be? Are you just going to do it online? It's a brick and mortar. And are you going to work from home? And looking at each individual piece as to how much money will I require if I choose any one of the 5 or 6, how I'd like to run my business. After that is how much time. Look at the time that you can allocate, as in If you have a family, have you discussed it with your family? This is the route that you want to take. And in that discussion, how do you arrange looking after the kids if you have kids? If you don't have kids, it's easier. It's yourself or just you and your spouse. So you can talk about it just like that. But if you have kids or you have elderly parents that you're looking after, that also need to be in your plan. Who's going to be assisting you? And those people should be involved in the plan as well. So that discussion need to be with just about everyone within your family, within your direct family, as to what will that look like. And those are the main pieces of your plan. And because that's how you're going to get your how, because you've got all the things, and I call them the stumbling blocks. It's not that it's going to stop you, but it's a stumbling block. It's something that you have to put in place so you don't trip over it at some point. And once you have those, I feel, in place, it's easier for you to do the other how, about the money. Then you start thinking about the money. Okay, I brought in X amount for the family. We're going to be short that amount. Now, what do I do about that to make up that shortfall? Again, the family has to be involved, especially your spouse or your partner. So that we're going to be short X amount of dollars each month because I'm not bringing in that much. And your partner says, we're fine. You can do it. You can do it for a year. Like the planning, you can take a year to plan. I can handle everything. And the other piece is, can you get this up and running within that year so you can cover that loss to move on? So it's very strategic when you're planning to start your own business. Now, if you get a package and you're transitioning and they give you a package because they have let you go, it becomes a lot easier. Depending on how long you were working there, you might get a very good package to last you, and you still get your benefits here in Canada. You get your package, it could last a year or 2 years, and you still get your health benefits as well. So then you can look at it and says, I want to use X amount from my package to start my business, X amount to go into the bank for a rainy day for the family to use as well.
And is that career transition plan different somehow if you decide that I want to go back into a more traditional corporate job versus what you're describing, going out and starting my own business? Are there similarities, differences?
There are differences because this one is you're responsible for your own income. And again, the family, if you have a family, you're responsible for helping the family, depending on how much you are bringing in. And you're starting from scratch because what it is that if you're going back into the same career or just a little bit elevated, you know what that career is all about. You know exactly what you're doing. And it's not saying that you don't know what you're doing when you move into entrepreneurial, but it takes a little bit longer to get your name out there or your products for people to buy it. Nobody really knows who you are. And the similarity between both is you still have to network for people to know who you are and that you're looking for a job. And the person who is becoming an entrepreneur, you need to network with other entrepreneurs to talk about what you're doing. And a lot of times that works well. I know it worked well for me, the networking, because I met other coaches, I met other people doing so many things, and my circle changed from just being corporate to I have all these people who have started their business, are doing coaching, they're doing so many different things. So there's a similarity, but just when you're going to apply to companies for a job and you already have that skill set, it's easier to maneuver than when you're starting from scratch with a business.
And Cecile, if you want that more traditional corporate job, or if you want to start a business, are there groups or support mechanisms that you know of, have heard of, that I should be looking at to help me during that transition?
Yes, I do. Because I live in Toronto, we do have a lot. And there are a lot of people who are not aware of it. So yes, I do have a lot because I am aware of where they can go, who they can network with, different networking group, as well as government funding as well too. We have a lot of government funding where you just write a proposal, and if they think that's something good and your proposal is good, you can get a grant. And with a grant, you don't have to pay anything back. And we have a special bank as well too. You can get small loans to start your business. So I do know where I can direct people to if they do need financing.
You've talked about understanding your financial situation as being one of the first steps. What's the next step that someone needs to be aware of when they have decided to do that career transition?
So if you're going towards entrepreneurship, it's time to work on the business plan. And I've helped clients write their business plans because I did a couple for myself. But we also have a lot of government places that can assist you. They're like unemployment office, where if you have to go look for a job, if you're unemployed and you're not highly skilled. They also have workshops that will tell you how to write your business plan, how to do your business. The other thing I suggest to clients as well too, and because I do have a lot of contacts, to be honest, and what I will do sometimes is set them up with people that I know that's doing something similar, or I'll ask friends that might be doing something that's similar. They might know friends, just to say, speak to this person and get some ideas before you branch out. For instance, my nephew was still in high school and he wanted to start a t-shirt business. And I had a friend who was a designer who have owned things, and I've sold them online and things like that. So I linked them together, and he did eventually start a t-shirt business, and it was a success. He didn't pursue it after he finished university, but while he was in high school, he made the t-shirts and was selling them. So it's getting people that have done it. Like, a lot of people try to start things that nobody has ever done. And that can be good. But now we're living in a world that we're so connected. Somebody has done something similar. So it doesn't make sense to go it alone. Always, always make sure you've got a mentor, you've got a coach, or you've got a coach and a mentor, just somebody that can direct you and also help you with people who are actually doing the same work that you're intending to do. So you learn the pitfalls before you actually fall in a pit.
If I've made the decision that I'm going to leave, and again, whether it's I want to go find a different job or I want to be an entrepreneur, and I've made that kind of emotional, intellectual decision, how do you coach your people? Should they stay until they get either that new job found or that they have their new entrepreneurial venture set up? Or should they leave so that they can devote 100% of their time to pursuing those two?
I would suggest that they stay. The first thing first, when they decide and they figure it out, they know what they want to do. And if they've been to the company for quite a while and they're in managerial capacity or in a leadership capacity, I would suggest to them, and I said, well, you know what? Talk to your director. Talk to your executive vice president. Talk to someone within the company that you work closely with. Say, this is what I'm planning, and I'd love to stay on to work maybe 3 days a week while I am planning. If you're there and you're a good worker and you're in a position that, they respect your work and they need you, most companies will say yes. And you can stay and help with the hiring as well to replace you once you know that I can actually work on my business while I'm still earning some money. So that's a way of doing it as well too. If you're leaving with a package and you tell them this is what I want to do and which is what I want to pursue, now you're quitting. So therefore, quitting a job, you're leaving without money. Did you save before you made that decision? So I'll ask my clients, have you got savings to cover this? And some will say, yes, this was an emotional decision. This is something I've been thinking over. If they haven't, I said, if you don't have savings towards this, my question is, how are you going to go about this? I can't think of anyone who have ever have an answer. And this is when I said, think about it though. Should you be leaving your job without money, or should you find time in your schedule to start it while you're still working? And for the most part, people are able to start it while they're still working, because after work, they can do something. On the weekends, they can do something. But if you have the savings and this is something that you've been saving up for maybe 10 years, you can just exit the company by letting them know, this is what I'm planning to do. It has nothing to do with the company, but this is what I love to do, and this is what I'm going to be doing.
Cecile, you've coached a number of individuals over the years. Have you found that the benefits of making that career change has outweighed the risk involved in making the change?
Funny you should say that, because on Sunday, I went for a walk with a client. It was a walking session, and a young client. I worked with her while she was in corporate. During the pandemic, she was let go, and they had intended to hire them back, but they didn't. She was in tourism and she was senior manager at a hotel. And what she did was she thought, okay, maybe this is my opportunity to look into things that I would like to do. And there were two things she wanted to do. She wanted to become a fitness trainer because she always had a weight problem and she was always working out. And she was saying she'd love to become a fitness trainer just to help people, because a lot of times fitness trainers just look so super fit that people are afraid to approach them. And she said she has a journey and she has a story, so people could gravitate towards her. So we talked it through and I said, well, you are going to, right. And she moved in with her parents because she could do that. She was young, she could do that. I said, but you can't live with your parents forever. So you're going to need to start something. And so she did her certification online, and then she started teaching at a community gym, and then she started teaching at private gyms. And now she wants to branch out to start her own fitness training. And she has the idea, she's working on our business plan. She has the idea how to not just make it a gym you come in and you work out, but make it to be like a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle change you're making. So she's talking about eventually having dietitians and just everything. And she's going to make it women only. And she showed me a part of her business plan, and it was really well put together. So that's one idea she had. The second idea she had, which she actually worked on during COVID and was doing it on her own. She became a cleaning lady. So she was helping people clean their houses. And so she wanted to start a cleaning business as well, because she hasn't done it since she started the personal training. And she went through everything and what she planned to do, how she planned to do it. And she planned that she would have a van and she would pick up the cleaners and I guess, again, just young, and she's got these great ideas. I'm not killing it. Nobody's killing it for her at all. And she spoke to her dad about it, and he said, I think it would be a lot better and a lot more efficient if you hire people who can drive. And she said, yes, she agreed. He said, it's going to be too expensive for you to keep the van on the road when you're just starting. And then I said to her, you're in the fitness business right now. You're not cleaning anymore. You're doing well. One of the gyms that she teaches at, the owner of the gym actually allowed her to speak to 5 of the clients that she trained for her to test it out at her own gym, what she envisioned it when she's ready. She can use his gym and he will not charge her. I said, that's the best bet. Go with the one that just seems a lot more stable, a lot less work, and you can build it faster. And then you can move to the cleaning business if you still desire that one. So it's okay to do it and you can do it. But I just think a lot of times doing it alone is not a good idea. It's asking for help. You're not asking for help for people to change your mind, but it's for people who have done it or get a mentor who have a successful business. I really believe in mentoring because I do that as well. And it makes a difference when you're actually helping someone because it really gets your brain thinking as to what you did in the past to get to where you're at. So you're sharing your ideas. So I do think it's quite possible for it to work.
Cecile, I've heard you say before on networking that authenticity beats agendas, that you need to stop networking for networking's sake and start connecting with people.
It is true because what I didn't like about networking when I was starting my business, I am more than my business. I am a person. Don't tell me about your business before you know who I am as a person, because what if you don't like my personality? What if I'm this mean person and I tell you something and you go out and do it and it doesn't work out? And I remember I was at a networking event and the person came up to me and he started talking to me and he goes, oh, what do you do? And I said to him, I am more than my business. I'm a person and I have interest in stuff. Why don't you ask me about something I'm interested in, a sport or what I play? And he goes, oh, what sport do you play? And I said, well, I'm a runner. I weight train and I love tennis. And he said, oh my God, so do I. So we had this great conversation about tennis. Then we got into business and we're still friends today. All because of that. And that's why a lot of people don't like networking. And a lot of people are getting tired of networking because a lot of times they're handing out their business card. It's like they talk for 2 seconds, they hand their business cards out. And in doing so, if someone new to networking, they're standing there saying, but you haven't spoken to me as yet to see if I need your business card. So yes, so it's seeking connection. And what I find with connection is actually looking at group, that when you read about the group, don't just go to the group. See what's been said, what's going on. Everything is now automated. So you can always find feedback on groups that people have been to see if you will connect and gel. And one thing I advise my clients with when they go to networking sessions, if you're shy to meet people, go early. Go with the people who are setting up and get to know them. Because there are 2 reasons. When you come in to a place and they're the only ones there, they're going to look after you. They're going to know you. They're going to talk to you and ask you what you're doing, and they're going to introduce you to people. And when people come in and see you, you're already connected to the people who are actually running the event, so it becomes easier to connect. But don't show up late when everyone is talking walk in because you cannot get into a conversation, and then you slink in somewhere to the back and no one noticed you. And then you leave hating networking because it didn't work for you, because you didn't make a connection. But yes, connection is important.
Cecile, are there one or two books or resources that you would recommend to someone if they're going through their own transition?
Yes, actually, a book that I have that I love is Emotional Grit. And Emotional Grit it's really a good book because what it does, it's help you to transform your thoughts. It helps you. So when you're starting your business, you're reading such a book, you start thinking outside the box. You start looking about who you are, what you represent, what are your values, what are you good at. And that's something I always tell my clients, even clients that's looking for a job. You have to know yourself personally. What are your values? What are your deal breakers? When you're looking for a job, because I know people who their values, company values, have to match in some form because they will not work at that company. And knowing who you are, set boundaries, just knowing exactly who you are and how you want to show up as a person. So when they see you, they know exactly who you are. And it's the same thing when you're running a business. And that's the thing about emotional grit, is knowing who you are, being accepting of who you are, and being honest about it as well. If you're a direct person, just be direct when you're speaking. Do not change for anyone and waffle when you're speaking to someone because you're trying to be nice. Just be who you are. And it's not about being nasty. Just let people know who you are, because then if you're looking for people to recommend, they'll know how to say, lovely woman, she knows what she's talking about. Lovely man, he's great. I like him. He presents well. That's the thing about networking.
Cecile, we have gone through so much great information here this morning. If you want our listeners to remember just 2 or 3 items, what would those 2 or 3 items be?
Number one, the first one is know who you are. That is really important. It's great to know who you are. And 2, what would you like your life to look like in 10 years? And that will help you with your career as well as becoming an entrepreneur. And 3 is have a life plan, because your life plan is taking you to, say, 75, 80. And once you have those 3 things, I would say your life will be a lot more smoother. Yes, it will be bumpy, and bumpy is okay because you learn from the bump, but you know exactly in what direction you're moving in. And number one, why I said know who you are is because I find that to be very important, especially when you get to a certain age.
The one thing that I have learned from you is that notion of know who you are, and you know that about yourself, and that comes through so clear, so loud, that I understand why it is an important part of this process. Cecile, thank you so much for taking time and sharing with us and giving us some insights as we go through our own life plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. It was a pleasure being here as well and sharing my experiences.
Thank you for listening. We're working in unprecedented times. The purpose of these episodes is to give you the support and critical tools to adjust with the changing marketplace. I'll continue to introduce you to guests who have successfully survived their own obstacle course and can share useful information. If today's message was helpful to you, please share it on your social media. Your review and rating helps get this to more people. Also, if you have questions or podcast ideas for future conversations, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Change is constant. The more prepared you are for it, the better and easier the change will occur. Thank you again. This is your host, Bob Gerst. See you at our next episode.